All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cameron McClurg, and I will be presenting today on PeopleSoft on the Cloud, a case study for First Financial Northwest Bank. Thank you for joining us. I know this is the tail end of the week, and everybody might be a little bit webinared out at this point, but I do appreciate you jumping on here with this for this webinar. I do have my my contact information there, and am available to answer any kinds of questions either during the session or afterwards. Alyssa, do you have any other housekeeping? I think I should probably jump the gun there. Do you have any other housekeeping that you'd like to mention?
No, that's perfect. The only thing I would mention is that everyone is muted. So we do encourage questions. So you can do that in the chat box on your GoToWebinar module.
All right, thank you, Alyssa. And I apologize, I jumped in. I think you were supposed to start, so I apologize about that. All right, well, thank you for joining today. As I mentioned, my name is Cameron McClurg. I am work out of Seattle, and I've been doing PeopleSoft work for over 20 years. I started as business analysis and doing support work, and jumped into design and architecting, and eventually I worked as a director of financial systems at an organization as a customer of Oracle and PeopleSoft, and did that for many years, and joined the consulting ranks 2 years ago when I joined SpearMC. But before that, like I said, I was one of you guys as a customer, managing projects internally and support. So I know how that goes, and I know how the types of things that you have to work through as a customer. My areas are, of course, in addition to PeopleSoft, is I focus on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So I lead our Oracle Cloud Infrastructure and moving customers to OCI. And I've been sort of dabbling in some of the emerging technologies like chatbots, and also focus on decustomization as well. So those are sort of my main areas, but PeopleSoft is kind of our main area as an organization with SpearMC. SpearMC is an organization that's been around for a while. Many of you have heard of us, and we've been doing PeopleSoft work for over 15 years now. More recently, focusing in on PeopleSoft hosting on OCI. But we've always been rooted in our functional expertise, financials, HCM, grants, et cetera. That's been kind of our bread and butter, and we've been able to add the technical and infrastructure side of things within the last few years. And it's offered a little bit more holistic ability to support our customers. And you can see some of the other things that we've been doing quite a long time, like reselling, test automation, services like PUM updates and managed services. We'll be talking about that a little bit today in this case study for First Financial. But this is a little bit about my organization, SpearMC. We've round the country. We do have international clients as well, but basically we have all of the different parts of the country covered, and you can see a couple of our locations there. As I mentioned, I work out of the Seattle office up here on the left coast, so to speak. All right, today we're going to be talking about PeopleSoft on OCI, as you are well aware, and we're going to be talking about a specific case study with First Financial Northwest Bank. So we'll be talking about their challenge, how OCI works for them, and the concepts around Cloud Infrastructure 101. We'll be talking about specifically their solution and what we did for them. And then we'll kind of talk through mechanics and what it looks like to move to OCI and what kinds of options you have for that. We'll start with some questions that you can ask about yourself or your organization. So, and this comes from my background of working within an organization and knowing that different people within the organization have different perspectives and different needs. So specifically, if you think about yourself and your organization, what best describes you and your organization? Would it be that you are really looking to move to the cloud, and it's really cloud first and potentially only? The other end of the spectrum is, no, we're just on-prem. We don't really trust the cloud. We don't want to move to the cloud. We are we're very happy to stay where we're at. And then for most organizations, you're kind of considering where it makes sense to kind of go ahead and dip your toes in the cloud. And I think that's a good approach to have, is use some common sense and look at the economics of it and figure out if, different aspects are good for you. Another question, is there alignment within your organization about what the cloud means? And again, this comes from my own background and experience where there isn't organizational alignment. Some people will use the term cloud, and really what they mean is SaaS. They mean software as a service. And that can be threatening to PeopleSoft users, PeopleSoft administrators, people that understand that PeopleSoft is quote unquote an on-prem software, but what does that mean? Some organizations are a little bit more nuanced when they talk about cloud. Maybe they understand the difference between software as a service versus infrastructure as a service. And we'll talk about that a little bit today. What's the state of your disaster recovery plans? Do you have a very robust DR strategy and plan? Do you have a map of where all the data goes, and have you tested that process internally? If not, it's something to always do in general, but OCI provides an easy mechanism to implement a DR strategy. We'll talk about that a little bit more. What about PeopleSoft Specific? Are you able to easily spin up a temporary database or for testing or evaluation? Are you able to take in the latest features or functionality and consider, which features you want to evaluate and actually selectively adopt? Are you keeping up to date with PeopleTools patches, or do you do it kind of maybe only once because it's so painful and you just live with PeopleTools bugs? Those are the types of things that you should be asking yourself, because when you start looking at OCI, there's a big differentiator here with the ability to do these things. And so it's something that you should be considering. Now, there's a little link there for some of the latest features that come out from a functional perspective. Go ahead and check that out. It comes from the Oracle PeopleSoft channel on YouTube. Okay, so let's focus in on our case study today, our use case. First Financial Northwest Bank is a bank in my neck of the woods up here in the Seattle region. They have somewhere between 12 and 15 branches around the Pacific Northwest in Washington, state of Washington. And they were, being a small organization, they kind of went right into working under a SaaS model. In other words, they didn't want to have a big, robust on-prem data center. They were a small organization. And so they were simply using a SaaS from a different software company that provided them banking software as well as financial accounting software. And what they found with this was, while it met their needs from having no on-prem servers and not a lot of on-prem IT staff to support it, it didn't meet their needs from a performance perspective or security. So those were two things that were a major problem on their old model under SaaS. And we could say this is kind of the bad use case of the SaaS model, where you don't have visibility to the back-end data. You don't have ability to modify the experience. And you're kind of stuck with the lack of security and the lack of performance. That's kind of the bad SaaS model that people, quite frankly, why they're still very in tune with PeopleSoft and other software where you can really control a lot of that experience. So when they approached us, we offered them a view of what a hybrid approach where we could sort of address their needs and keep them under the model where they didn't want to have a lot of IT staff and didn't want to have infrastructure, but they wanted a more robust software package so they could really get the functionality, security they wanted, and it would perform well. So we'll look at that a little bit more as we go on. But first, let's take a step back and quickly talk about Cloud 101. Again, Oftentimes there's not alignment in terms of cloud language and cloud terminology. So I want to kind of clear up a couple concepts. The first is to understand the difference between infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software servers on the left towards a fully SaaS solution, software as a service. You start to integrate aspects of the software as you move left to right. So when you're talking about infrastructure as a service, you no longer have to worry about networking, storage, virtual servers, the virtualization of those servers, et cetera. And as you move towards a platform, you start to integrate or entertain the new features that are just available to you on the platform. And I'll explain some of those features that are used in this under this model. As you move to full SaaS, then you really don't have control of your application or the data in addition to the servers and potentially some of the middleware and operating systems either. So really, as you move left to right, there's a giving up of control of the application over into being managed by a service provider. Now, this is really, we're talking about a cloud service provider, but in reality, you could actually be leveraging outside services even for the stuff on the left in blue. So for example, SpareMC is offering support for virtualization and all the managed services, even if you're not on the cloud. So it doesn't necessarily mean that's managed by you. It really should really say managed by you or controlled by you as an organization. As you move to the right in the red, you're really giving up control of these things, and really you're just looking at these as services. So if we take a step back and say, where is really the money being spent on quote unquote cloud? Well, prior to 2018, really the majority of the dollars that were spent on clouds really were spent on SaaS. So prior to 2018, 19% of budgets that were spent on cloud, mostly for SaaS. That number is growing. By 2022, the prediction was 28% of IT budgets will be spent on cloud. These numbers are a couple years old, so I wonder if that number has moved north a little bit. But the bottom line here is that prior to 2018, most of the money being spent was really for SaaS. And if that makes sense, because if you think about some of the early SaaS tools, you think about things like Slack or Office 365 or some of those SaaS solutions that answered a specific problem and met a specific need for people. Some of the on-prem software is a little bit slower to move to SaaS, and also infrastructure is a little bit slower to move to SaaS. But if you think about this, and what this article sort of points out is that after 2018, most of the dollars will now be spent on infrastructure versus SaaS. Okay, so more people are looking at infrastructure now than they are looking at the move to SaaS. So if we think about typical problems with capacity planning, in other words, infrastructure planning, if you're on-prem with your servers and data center, you're probably following the blue line. And what that means is that you typically plan and build your infrastructure based on future growth needs. And it stair steps in the sense that you have that capacity. But let's say that you have, you need to do PUM maintenance or tools patching or upgrade. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to spin up additional servers to support that work. And typically, once you spin those up, they kind of generally stick around. And so you need additional capacity to handle things like tools patching upgrades, which require additional servers, or PUM maintenance that require a heavy test model. So you need more capacity. And so the stair-step model is kind of the traditional way of doing it. And when you do that, there's a couple problems with that. You're overspending essentially on that capacity that you don't really need, but that's kind of the way you do it on-prem in an on-prem data center. The alternative is when you're under capacity, you have some upset users, right? Because people start complaining about the system slowing down and not really responding. And so you go through this process of we're oversized, and then oops, we're undersized, and now we're going to be responsive, and we're going to go oversize again. And that on-prem model has been the way it's gone for many years. That model doesn't work in the cloud. In the cloud, you need to match your capacity with the actual needs of the application. This is very important from getting a return on your investment. If you took the blue stair-step model and you built your cloud infrastructure this way, you would be overspending and potentially not really finding a true ROI on the move to cloud infrastructure. So the ability to do this really closely matching your needs with the cloud elasticity is really the key differentiator with moving to cloud infrastructure. So instead of really building for the future, which is the model for on-prem, you really have to base your sizing needs on your current needs, not future needs, current needs. And then you're constantly monitoring, assessing, expanding. You're using the power of the cloud infrastructure to allow you to monitor it, to expand very easily with a push of a button, and really stay much more in tune with the needs of the application. This is really required, as I mentioned, for a true ROI on your move to the cloud. Okay, so that's in general cloud infrastructure. Let's talk about OCI, so Oracle's version of cloud infrastructure. Of course, you've probably heard of AWS, Amazon's version. You've heard of Azure, which is Microsoft's version of cloud infrastructure. OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, is the product that we're going to be looking at today, and the product that we are recommending people go to, and we'll explain why. So on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, there are the same concepts that you would have mostly on-prem. So you've got these, servers, you've got networking, you've got storage, you've got databases, et cetera. There are a couple ones that exist only in OCI that don't exist, or concepts or terminologies, I should say, that exist in OCI that don't exist on-prem. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we look at some compare and contrast. The first one to think about is the OCI Compute Service. This is the central service within OCI, and think of this essentially as servers. So you can spin up as many compute services as you want, and think of that as a server, okay? So there's two main groups of these. You have virtual servers, and you have bare metal. So think of it as a dedicated machine to you as a customer, or you're in a virtualized situation. Now, there are some really cool things that they're doing with the bare metal, where you basically get to bring your own virtualization software, a hypervisor, that allows you to manage the virtualization across these dedicated boxes. That's a key differentiator with OCI over other cloud providers, and something that they allow you to do. I was just on a session a day or two ago. We were talking about how Amazon does not allow you to bring your own virtualization software. So something you can do when you're on a dedicated box like these bare metal boxes. So we really recommend this in much more intensive performance needs. People can go to that. Now, for smaller customers, and most customers, frankly, you don't need to go to the bare metal, but the virtualization, the VMs work just fine. Within each of these, the virtual VMs or the bare metal, you have a wide range of options for performance, scalability, all the way up to high performance, and really the price is directly related to how much performance you want out of this. They come in two images, Windows or Linux, and the shape defines the processing power. And later on, I'm going to show you a graphic of how this can be. In fact, actually, it's right now. So let me go to that. So let's talk. We talked about the elasticity, the ability to track to performance. So here we have a specific server. This is a Linux box, and we can come in very easily. Look at this. We can stop the service we want to. We can reboot all the abilities that you'd normally have with these services. You can very easily change the shape, and by doing that, you can come in here. You can take a look at the chips. So you've got an AMD chip, you've got an Intel chip, and with the check of a box, I can grow this from one CPU to two what they call OCPUs, which is similar to a CPU on-premise server. So by simply saying, you know what, we are not tracking there's strain on the server, we need additional horsepower. You simply come in here, check the box, you have to reboot the server, and you are off and running in an expanded ability to support the needs. And that's elasticity right there in action. It's something that is very easy to do in OCI. Let's take a look at a Windows box. Same concept. I can change the shape of a Windows box, and here we have additional features. This can go the other way too. I can move backwards. Let's say I oversize this, and I had 16 gigabytes of memory, and I'm tracking that typically we only use about 6 to 7 gigabytes of memory. I could move this back down to one OCPU and 8 gigabytes of memory. Perhaps I look at a web server and do a really small box for that. But let's say maybe a database server would be built more in a more robust fashion. Very easy to do and very easy to scale and change elasticity very easily. Okay, so moving on to the next concept, storage. So instead of saying all storage is just one type of storage meets all needs and there's one price for it, high performing storage that allows you to move data in and out very quickly. You don't need that for archive situation. You're going to archive data, you want to put it somewhere. You're not going to be constantly getting it back and forth. So you don't want to be paying as much money for that as you would for what they call block storage. So think of that kind of like mounted drives to your servers versus an archive backup, which would just be kind of this offline storage that you don't need actually connected to your server. You can still, move data back and forth between block storage and object storage, but you don't want to be paying all the price of block storage. There's a difference in this price. And then of course they have file storage, which is, I like to think of as a file storage system or file storage service, which is an additional service that you can think of it like a network drive on-prem where everybody shares from one specific file system. Great for things like image repositories or documentation repositories, things that are shared across multiple services, multiple servers. So different types of storage and different costs. Database. So there's two options for database. Once you set up these servers, these compute services, they work just like servers on-prem. In other words, you can install whatever you want on there. You could install a SQL Server database. You could install a different type of database, or even an Oracle database. So you can do that. You can bring your own license under that model. But really, we're pushing people towards this database cloud service. So database as a service works on VMs, bare metal, or even Exadata. This provides an additional option that allows greater flexibility with multi-tenancy, in other words, supporting multiple environments, or also ability to spin up, spin down, and as well as potentially moving towards autonomous database, which is something that will be coming here soon and be certified with PeopleSoft environments. So we're really pushing people towards this database cloud service. It does cost money, but in cases where, let's say, your licensing for Oracle database has expired, or you don't have a license for Oracle database, you can move straight to database as a database cloud service without having to buy a license for the Oracle database, and it's just a cheaper model for you to move towards, and the service is actually better. Okay, so if we look at sort of on-prem versus OCI, what are the things that are very similar or the same? Servers, we talked about that. That's kind of what they call compute instances. Mounted drives, think of that as block volume. Database, you have two options. You have database service or bring your own license. Backup, object storage, and then load balancing, you have load balancing as well. Although we'll talk about that here in a second, that load balancing in the OCI world is essentially a platform service that you can just turn on, and you do not need to purchase separately an F5, which is what most organizations do for load balancing. Okay, so let's look at some unique terms to OCI. So the first concept is a virtual cloud network. So this is simply like a network on-prem. However, you can set up your virtual cloud networks however you want. This provides essentially logical isolation of your different network components. So you can put certain servers in one virtual cloud network, and you can put some in a different cloud network. This works for security. So you wanted to allow people into some aspects of the network. Maybe you want them to get into a jump box or some kind of Windows server, but did not want them to get into the back end with the database server. You could isolate those into different VCNs and provide different security for that. A container is something that is not really a use case for the PeopleSoft world, but you can use this concept of containerizing your whole application, which includes the middleware, the backend. All of it can be containerized into one specific item that can then be moved and ported from one place to another. The next thing to talk about is the Fast Connect. Fast Connect allows for you to hook up with a third-party provider, the ability to connect to a dedicated pipeline between yourself, your on-prem servers, and the OCI network. Using a third-party provider provides a dedicated internet pipeline from your servers to the network. And we have a couple customers that are using this Fast Connect. It works well when you need dedicated movement of data back and forth between on-prem and OCI. And it comes in a couple of ranges. It comes in 1 gigabit per second and 10 gigabit per second. So in cases where you have constant movement of needs between on-prem and OCI, Fast Connect is a great option for you. And then lastly, regions and availability domains. On-prem, of course, you're just dealing with your data center, and sometimes in large organizations, you might have data centers in different locations. But here within OCI, there's a concept of regions and availability domains. So let's take a look at the regions. In the orange-red kind of boxes here, you can see the existing commercial data centers, or what they call regions. You'll notice there's 2 in the United States, Ashburn and Phoenix. There is a new one coming in the Bay Area. I don't know when that's going to be online, but I'm assuming it'll be soon, within this year probably. And then there's a great deal of expansion across the world. So for international customers, you have a lot of options for where you want your data to be. That can sometimes be based on performance, and sometimes it can be based on regulatory requirements. You need to have your data in a specific, in your specific country, something like that. And note also that they do have special government regions as well, with additional government planned regions coming to support different organizations. Oh, and then within each of these, there's availability domains. So within each region, there's either 2 or 3 different availability domains that again allow for logical and isolation between different components in your OCI footprint. Okay, so let's talk about the pricing and how pricing works for OCI. You can sign up today for OCI, and if you do that, you actually get some small amount of credits. Oracle gets you started with a few $100s of credits. But in general, when you start up, you can do a pay-as-you-go model where you're essentially saying, yep, I want to spin up compute services. I want to use Database Cloud. I want to maybe do some autonomous data management stuff. Anything you do, you can just go under a pay-as-you-go model. It's kind of like a list price, and anything you do, you'll just get charged when you use it. So you can spin up, spin down. There's no minimum terms. You always pay in arrears, and there's no discounting for that. So that provides you some flexibility, but you're paying the most amount for that individual service at that moment when you have that service up. Alternatively, if you know you're going to be spending over a certain amount of money, and this is something that we help you with in terms of figuring this out, is you can commit to a minimum level. That level is $1,000 a month, and you can essentially get monthly flex, and that allows you a lower per unit price for all the different services, or most of the different services within OCI. So if you commit to $1,000 a month, you get discounts on all the different services, and you get this thing called Universal Credit Model, which allows you to apply those credits anywhere. You're not buying individual SKUs like you used to. You pay into for a certain amount of credits, and you get to use that for any of the services that you can see under these different categories. So what we do is we work with you, and we say, with our sizing estimates with you, we can look at how we can combine maximum pricing efficiency. And what we mean by that is we want you to commit to enough for the max discounting. If you're not close to $1,000 a month, then we wouldn't be talking about this. But if you're close, there's a value in committing to $1,000 a month or more, but buying less than you need, committing to less than you need. And by doing that, you make sure that you don't overspend and leave money on the table. So you want to commit to less than what you think you need, okay? And we've had this situation happen with a couple customers where they've overspent and they leave credits on the table and they don't get those back from Oracle, as you probably know when you work with Oracle. So this is important to note that what we do is when our model is we work with you and we size it to bring in a lower than needed amount to commit to, and then everything over that you just are charged in arrears as overages, and this will allow you for maximum pricing efficiency. Okay, so let's get back to our customers. So we talked about the challenge that they had. So let's take a look at how we tried to solve this. So we recommended our Cloudship program. And so we've got a program, I'll mention it here in a second, PeopleSoft on OCI Cloudship. And it's a program to help people move quickly to the cloud. This new solution that we have includes the scalable computing power and storage, disaster recovery, and network-to-network security, amongst other things. So let's talk about what some of those other things are that are in our program that we propose to First Financial. So our Cloudship program starts out with some needs analysis. So we talk through kind of why do you want to move to the cloud? What are your drivers? Is it cost? Is it scalability? Is it performance? What are the, maybe it's DR. What are the reasons why you want to move? So that's kind of the first step that we work with people. We then plan and execute on a lift and shift. That can either be a apples to apples move, depending on what you are on currently. We can move you and shift you over into OCI, or we can look at it as a move and improve. In other words, let's say you're on an older version of PeopleTools and you want to get current with PeopleTools. We can do that as part of our move and improve process, where not only are you moving to cloud, but we actually are upgrading your PeopleTools, or even in the PUM instance, we can do that as well. Of course, that requires a little bit more work and it's a little more complicated from a testing perspective, but that's something that some organizations do. Other organizations just want a quick and easy move and they want to keep it as a lift and shift and don't move too many things around. We do either one of those. Once you're up there, then you get the benefits of our hosting services. So we not only keep the lights on for you, but do proactive support of looking at this resource management, making sure that your elasticity and everything's working well in terms of your servers and storage and all that. And here's the big one that I really want to focus you guys in on. Cloud Manager offers some significant differentiators here. The PeopleSoft Cloud Manager, and you'll see this graphic on the left, is an optional item that only exists on OCI. It does not exist, and you cannot use it on-prem. You can't use it on another cloud provider. It only works on OCI. It's directly connected to the marketplace, Oracle's marketplace, and it basically subscribes to all of the feature updates as well as PeopleTools updates. I have a couple slides on this later on, so I'll get into that a little bit more later. But basically, this is your tool that is the differentiator with OCI. And once you have it, it does offer that full lifecycle management on OCI with ability to spin up environments, to do DR, to spin them back down, to manage, to subscribe and manage all of the updates to your PeopleSoft instances. So again, let's get back to First Financial. So what happened? Well, it was a 4-month project. That's a very, very fast project from signing the contract to being live on PeopleSoft. And this was not an upgrade. This was not hey, we're on PeopleSoft on-prem. This was a completely different software package, and we had a net new install of PeopleSoft. So what did we do? Well, first thing we did is we created their OCI tenancy. So we worked with them to establish a tenancy and manage that tenancy for them. We started with demonstrations and training where we talked about the different features, and this was a PeopleSoft Financials use case where we worked through the different needs that they were considering as part of their need to implement a new software package. We worked through the requirements gathering and mapping to functionality. I'll point out that we essentially went with 100% delivered functionality. We did add a couple items later on after the project was live, things like audit of security and things that aren't delivered out of the box, but we did not touch any of their delivered objects. And that's very important to point out that we were able to do 100% delivered functionality for these guys. And that's quite frankly how we were able to stick to a 4-month project. We included configurable enhancements. So did delivered functionality mean that they couldn't tailor their experience in PeopleSoft? No, absolutely not. We could still tailor their experience to their needs through configurable enhancements, things like page and field configurator. We were able to change terminology on pages and make sure that certain fields were required when they were doing data entry. That typically was it used to be a customization. Now it's just a configuration. And so we were able to do that for them through this configuration of the enhancements. We have a DR strategy now for them, whereas they did not have anything before. DR is now fully ingrained into what they do and what we have for them on OCI. And network connectivity. So we connected up their network to ours. One of the last things we did, or it's not to ours, sorry, to OCI. We connected that so that they would have full interoperability between on-prem for their users up into the cloud. No users know that system is not on-prem. It's not something that they're aware of. Their IT staff knows that, but for them, they simply just open up the application and use it. So that's the real key here, is that they are simply just users of the application. They do not have to manage the application themselves. And the last but certainly not least, very important for me as a engagement manager and project manager, it was an uneventful go live. That's exactly the type of go lives I like, uneventful. Meaning that we went live successfully, the user started using the system, and there was not a lot of drama or issues, and that's how we like our projects. All right, so I'm not going to talk through every one of these results achieved. This came from a kind of a blend of what the customer felt that they got, in addition to what we like to see. So, for example, they got time-saving consolidated reporting with automatic tracking of intercompany payables and receivables. That was very important for them. They're accountants. They liked this. They didn't have that before. They liked the streamlined approval process and the stringent internal controls, things they did not have in the previous software solution that they had. They liked the ability to this reporting of multi-dimensional analysis. Now, if you've been on PeopleSoft for a long time, you're like, yeah, these are standard things. But for these guys, they did not have a lot of these things in their old package. So they were loving the feature functionality of PeopleSoft. And then from the OCI perspective, they love the idea of this great performance and scalability. And from a service provider, we love the ability to enhance and patch their environment very easily using PeopleSoft Cloud Manager. So what are some of the things we did for them? Well, 100% of the users' interaction is with home pages, tiles, navigation, collections, and work centers. The users have never heard of the term breadcrumbs. We've never used it. They've never asked for it. They don't care. And that's the key. That's kind of my plug for moving to Fluid. Once you do it, people will stop asking about breadcrumbs because it's really not important in the new use of PeopleSoft. Our support, whether it's system administration with proactive patching or maintenance, or functional support, is all SLA driven. So we are proactive with our patching and maintenance. And as I mentioned, functional support with best practice security, functionality, and we do the configurable enhancements for them in a proactive model. We have a partnership with their IT help desk. They did not want to have IT staff to support and keep the lights on of this application. However, they did want a little bit of control when it came to things like unlocking a user. Let's say a user entered the wrong password too many times and locked themselves out. They could spin up a request to us, but they could also just walk over to the person that sits right next to them and say, hey, can you unlock me? So the IT help desk was cross-trained on how to do simple things like unlocking or adding a role to a user, but do not do anything with respect to system administration. So we partner with the IT help desk. We work behind them and support them in providing that lower level and closer service to the customer there on site. So what are the differentiators? We talked about this a little bit. PeopleSoft Cloud Manager is the differentiator. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. End-to-end warranty on availability, performance, manageability. That's something that Oracle offers on OCI that the other cloud providers do not. Something very important to point out. Their past tool sets, which we'll talk a little bit about as well, are something that you can just subscribe to and use, as well as the database cloud service, something you just can use. These are differentiators for OCI that you won't get on other cloud providers. So Oracle or PeopleSoft Cloud Manager, talked about this a little bit, but what makes it the differentiator? Okay, let's take a look at some of the key features that make this a differentiator and really the killer app for you if you're a PeopleSoft customer. Well, it provides lifecycle automation. What do we mean by that? Well, it offers ability to do patching, spinning up new environments, spinning down old environments, all through a GUI essentially. Whereas normally in the old days you would go in and do back-end work. You can do that all through the Cloud Manager now. It's very easy to use. There's no download of images or updates. All of those updates and images, and I think I have a graphic on this, is pushed to you through a subscription. And if anybody has actually gone through the process of downloading updates from Oracle, it can be quite annoying and time consuming. No longer you have to do that. When the patches, let's say a patch 05 for PeopleTools 858 is available, it's automatically there for you, ready to deploy. And that's a big deal for people. Templates, ability to create a shape, which is kind of the server and the clients, how you want to build a specific environment. Let's say you have a demo environment that's one stack. You don't need multiple distributed architecture for that. You could do that with a template versus a test template that has a distributed architecture versus a prod that might have load balancing and other features. That's all templates that you can create and manage. The ability to connect to target environments, so the PUM, this idea of PUM, where you're able to have one environment come in and connect to other target environments and manage those other environments. Something you can do through Cloud Manager very easily. There's a dashboard, the PUM dashboard, that allows you to track bugs and issues. And then ability to easily spin up reporting databases, archive databases for a full disaster recovery. All of that is done through Cloud Manager, and I have another graphic later on to talk about Cloud Manager. So let's take a look at what Cloud Manager looks like. This is a screen of when you log into Cloud Manager. You can see some different tiles. It's all, the fluid interface. When I click on environments, I can see all the environments I'm running through this Cloud Manager. In this case, I have a few financials, a couple HCM, a campus solutions environment. And any one of these, I can go in and look at the details of it, which will show me things like the PeopleTools patch, or what level I'm at. I can spin it up, I can turn it off, that sort of thing. You can see a few of these that are stopped. Very easy to manage the environment itself. The next is the environment template. Here you can see that we've got different templates that allow for different topologies. Maybe a topology that allows for one full stack versus a distributed node architecture. Very easy to create that template and then reuse that template for new environments. We talked about downloading subscriptions. Here, what we've done is we've subscribed to these different channels, what they're called. And then you can see that over here on the latest updates, you can see different numbers within each of these different channels. Those are available patches and bug fixes for you to take in and just drop right into your environment. Very, very easy to do that. You no longer have to go hunt for these patches. They're already there, ready to be deployed. Very easy to manage. And then we talked about the ability to have one environment connected to other environments. Here we have one PUM environment that is actually stopped, and it's connected to other environments. Normally these would all be up, and the upload target would be a successful connection, but right now it's down, and so it's in a failed state. But you can see how easy it is to have these connections and manage that. Okay, so managing PeopleTools patching, very easy to do with Cloud Manager. You can download or have the download be pushed to you through the subscription, and you can patch an existing environment. You can also create a new environment with the updates, updated patch included. So you really have two options for that when you want to do patching. And there might be a reason sometimes to create a new environment, and sometimes you just want to patch the existing environment, for example, if you're in production. So let's take a look at that, how easy that is. Here I'm in, I've opened up one specific environment, and I'm going in to apply so here I'm looking at environment details, and I don't have a screenshot of this, but you can see details about the process scheduler, the database, if there's a PeopleSoft client, the web server, etc. But I'm going to click on this app apply People Tools patch, and you'll notice here that the current patch is 85801, but I have the ability to select the 02 patch. It's already downloaded, it's already in there waiting for me to deploy. And so as a system administrator, I can simply click on 02 and then hit update. And once you do that, you'll notice that the status down below says database update task in progress. And that will run for anywhere from a couple hours to many more hours, depending on how much work it has to do and how many versions away from the original patch that I am. You can dig into the status and watch this happen, watch this work, where it does the domain shutdown, it does the database update, it does all the provisioning, etc. You can watch this. You can, it will, for any kind of troubleshooting, I can retry. And eventually, you'll notice that at the end, if it's completed successfully, you'll have this feature, or you'll have this option at the top that says current PeopleTools version. You'll notice that's now 85802. So I've successfully patched my PeopleTools environment, and it's really that simple. Obviously, if the tools patch fails, then you need to go in and troubleshoot. So this isn't quite ready for people like me who are not a system administrator to go in and do all this work. It's not quite ready for that. You still need somebody who's well-versed in PeopleSoft and PeopleSoft system administration, but it's pretty easy to manage once you do have that background to do it all through here and simply manage it. It allows you as a system administrator to do much more work in a faster way to support your customers. So Cloud Manager is really the roadmap and kind of what's happened so far with Cloud Manager. You'll notice that if you look at the dates, they roughly track to 2 updates a year. And it also means that we're almost ready for Image 11. And I do believe that that's going to be coming out within the next week or two. So Image 11 will be, in addition to all the things that you've seen in the other features that have come in these different images, Image 11 will have additional features that you can see there in some of the feature ideas, feature roadmap. What I want to focus you in on, and specifically not any one specific feature, although there are some really great features here, things that you could never have done previously, like database refreshes and automated backup and restores, and ability to have zero downtime migrations, all these things that are really, really great that you could never used to be able to do. What I want you to focus in on is that there's 2 image updates a year, and they're iterating quickly. PeopleSoft technical group, the PeopleTools group within Oracle, David Bain and Matthew Havisto and the others, they're focusing in on this. They want this PeopleSoft Cloud Manager to really support a greater ability to provide value to your organization. And so if you're not on OCI, which means you're not using PeopleSoft Cloud Manager, your investment dollars for PeopleSoft going to Oracle is you're leaving some money on the table. You're investing dollars with them. They're investing those dollars in these new features and functionality, but you're not able to take advantage of it if you're not on OCI. So, and by the way, we do have some more listing of these different features that are coming in the appendix. So definitely check that out. And before I conclude here and talk through or get to Q&A, I'll mention that we do have another use case in the appendix for what it looks like to do a lift and shift. So kind of in conclusion here, First Financial wanted to have more of a turnkey service where they did not want to have IT staff that would support the application. They didn't have the staff. They didn't have the servers. So they wanted to work with a service provider that could just sort of allow them to be PeopleSoft users and just use the software. They had better things to work on. They didn't want to worry about the infrastructure or supporting the system. And we supported them with doing all of that for them. Other customers do have robust system administrative teams. And so they simply want to work with us to help them get up on OCI, which is something we can do as well. And every iteration between those, whether it's just training or just supporting the planning process to move to OCI, we do all of that under our Cloudship program and can help all the customers in different ways. This one at First Financial was a specific use case, and for them, they're getting a lot of value out of OCI and our services to support them on that. That is the conclusion of this. I hope that you learned a little bit about OCI and how PeopleSoft works on OCI. I hope you learned a little bit about First Financial and their use case and how they see value from Oracle Cloud Infrastructure.